What's going on, y'all? It's your boy Cool Colas here, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. Before we get on to the topic for today, I would love it if you did a few things. Hit the like button, subscribe button, share button, and bell icon so you get notifications for whenever I come out with new content on this channel. And then when you are finished watching this video, leave me a comment below. That way I can get back to whatever it is that you had to say about the topic. For today's topic, I want to do an analysis of the movie The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. It took me a while to watch this movie just because I thought it really should have ended after the third one with Caesar, and now they're coming out with another movie. But my man Torian Rain, shout out to him, actually informed me that this movie had a lot of allegories in it. So I wanted to make sure that I took a look at it and informed y'all about what my perception of it was and the things that I noticed. So let's get into it. So for those of you all who did not see this movie, I do want to give a very quick synopsis, but I do want you to watch the movie for yourself so you get to see the full account of everything that happened. Again, this movie has been out for quite a while and I'm just now getting to see it. But at the same time, I did want to kind of discuss some of the key things that I saw, especially for you all who did see the movie. But basically, it was about a story about these apes that were 300 years after the events of what took place with Caesar back in 2017. And how it went down basically was you had somewhat of a reincarnation of him in this character named Noah. I wouldn't say that he was fully like, he wasn't exactly like Caesar to the T, but they had a lot of similar qualities. And it showed how he went from trying to prove himself and make his family proud while being a part of this eagle clan and him getting these eagle eggs. They had this ceremony basically where it was like a bonding ceremony and they had to get eagle eggs so that they can hatch the eagle and raise them, and there were a couple other things that went around with that. At some point it led to a scene where there was speculation that they had come in contact with these creatures called echoes, and the echoes really were just humans because of the fact that Noah had this blanket. The blanket was used by a human and it had blood on it, and so they smelled echo, quote unquote, blood on it. So that ended up leading to there being a thing where they were ridding their clan of having to come into contact with the quote unquote echoes. And that became like a big stir up. At some point, there were a group of apes that ended up rummaging their whole city, and they were tearing people up, killing people. They took out Noah's daddy and all this other stuff, and they were looking for these echoes as well too. So it ended up turning to a thing where Noah was trying to get his family back because a lot of them had been captured and taken in and all this other stuff, and he ends up basically being mentored to a certain extent by this monkey who was around during Caesar's time period called Raka. And Raka, however you say his name, I think you say Raka, was trying to teach him the ropes of the way that Caesar saw things, because a lot of these apes that had rummaged their city and had tore everything up were basically saying that they were doing this in the name of Caesar. And he was, and the Raka character was talking about how, you know, Caesar wasn't just about all this destruction of apes and all this other stuff. Caesar actually had a certain care for humans, and as a result, he did too. And he tried to basically teach Noah those ways as well. At some point, you know, that he ends up finding this echo in this character named May, and May starts talking about her people and how there were humans and they were known to not be able to speak. Then she revealed that she herself is actually supposed to be a more intelligent human who can actually speak. So there was that piece as well too. At some point they get captured by that clan I told you about, that monkey clan, or the ape clan, and the leader of it was this guy named Proximus, this monkey named Proximus. And Proximus, he had a belief that the humans were keeping these heavy artilleries from the apes in order for them to basically control them. and he wanted to try to figure out how to get into that. He thought that Noah was quite a clever ape, so he wanted to try to take Noah basically underneath his wing and then try to help him maneuver to try to get a hold of those different things. And he was hoping to leverage May because he knew that May had more knowledge than what she was leading on. So there was a part at some point where they end up finding or discovering where all these different machinery weapons are at, and Proximus ends up showing up, and it becomes a thing where May ends up trying to drown all of the apes and all this other stuff. And then at some point it turns into like this battle where Proximus and Noah are basically facing off, and Noah calls in his eagles at a certain point to take down Proximus, and then that's pretty much the gist of it. There's way more to it than what I had just explained, but I wanted to give you all a short synopsis of what this movie was about so you all weren't lost as I was speaking about it. So when it comes to the Planet of the Apes series, a lot of y'all need to understand that the whole series, not even just this movie, the whole series is 100% completely allegorical. There are allegories throughout all of these movies, and I would love to kind of go back and break down the previous movies. That way you all are able to kind of understand what's really happening. But the gist of it is that the Planet of the Apes series is really about a few things. The first thing that it tends to delve into is the civil rights movement. Another thing that it tends to delve into are the riots, specifically the Watts riots, and the idea that black people will uprise and revolt against white supremacy. And it tends to kind of center in that theme in each movie, but different aspects of such. And this movie does the same thing, but it takes a slightly different turn than what you have seen in the other 3 installments of the more newly established Planet of the Apes movies. So in other words, the ones with Caesar. But this movie takes a totally different turn, and I really want to get into it. In a lot of these post-apocalyptic movies and TV shows, there's a certain theme and a certain pattern that I tend to see. And for reference, some of the other creations, some of the other lore, some of the other movies and TV shows, like I said, that I tend to see this pattern in outside of Planet of the Apes, or Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes in this case, is the 100. That's another place where you have this post-apocalyptic theme. And then another example would be the Avatar. So when we say the Avatar, I'm not talking about Aang and Korra. I'm talking about the blue people in the movies. So they all have this post-apocalyptic theme, and they kind of have the same kind of messages in them. And one of the main messages that they try to create in this in these types of movies is that they're now presenting a scenario where the sky has fallen and everything has just gone to shit. Like there's like that's what I would call it, the everything has gone to shit theme. And what they like to do is present a world where, you know, you don't have all this technology, you don't have all these big old cities, you don't have all this great infrastructure, you know, it's just a bunch of land, everything's collapsed, people are in survival mode, they're trying to figure out what they're going to do. And most of the time they have some type of element that is obscure compared to how your normal life is. So for example, in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, they had these apes that were hyper intelligent. In the 100, they had, you know, these people who were, they had like the key to the city of light, and then they had different types of people who were able to, you know, take people's bodies and stuff like that. They had these like scientific and supernatural elements. And then in Avatar, they had the Na'vis, which were these blue people that were really an allegory for the Nilotic people in Africa. So I say all this to say that they have something there that is obscure or abnormal, as also in addition to this post-apocalyptic world that they exist in. And then they have human characters who are in survival mode. There are only a few of them left, or a handful of them left, and they're trying to figure out a way to basically continue to live. But what they tend to do, and they've done it to some extent in each of these, is they have it where there are a ton of white characters who survive. So it's like there's a bunch of humans, but the humans tend to be either mostly white or completely white altogether. And what they're really trying to portray in these movies is that there's a insecurity with the dominant society. And the insecurity with the dominant society is that they want to project themselves as the people who will have the last stand at the end of the day. Despite the fact that we all know that there are low birth rates in the dominant society. And also the fact that there are many other black people and people who are non-white in this world, much more than there are white people overall. What they try to project is that they're going to be the last standing individuals. So despite the fact that there have been tons and tons of pieces of research out there to suggest that people are going to start mixing and we're going to see a lot of melanated people or people with color in their skin, they believe that they are going to be the last survivors. So as a result of such insecurities, they project themselves as the leaders, even in worlds that are 300 years ahead of our current time or 400 years ahead of our current time or whatever the case may be. And they'll have, if they have them, there'll be a few black people and they'll usually still be underlings or people who are seen as not important, or they're killed off or something like that. And the ultimate message that they're trying to show with this is that no matter what situation we're in, whether the sky is damn falling or whether we have beautiful infrastructure and technology and all this other stuff, white supremacy is going to prevail, and don't you forget it. So what they try to present in this is that they want you to know that there's still going to be an aspect of white supremacy, even if the resources are basically shot, even if they are on survival mode. Their whole goal, no matter what situation or scenario they are in, is to control the people or the elements that are there that they feel are beneath them, or they feel they can make beneath them. Now, in the movie Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, they take a slightly different approach than what I've seen in the previous Planet of the Apes movies, as I said earlier. Whereas before, they were trying to show you, again, allegories of civil rights figures such as Martin Luther King, Malcolm X to a certain extent, or at least the white supremacist perception of them. In this movie, they almost go into a futuristic deceptive theory. And let me explain what I mean by that. There's this thing in the dominant society, specifically the conservative white supremacists tend to do this, and a lot of their coon flunkies tend to do this as well too, especially non-FBA coon flunkies. They love to kind of go along with this narrative and spout it all the time like it's real, and it's just not. It's just coon babble. They like to project this idea that because there is white supremacy, there also could be black supremacy. Black supremacy is just not a thing. Black supremacy will literally never be a thing. And the reason why is because black people have no will to oppress white people systematically. Because the reality is that if we really wanted to do something bad to white people, we could have done it a long time ago, but we're not trying to do that because that's not in our nature. It's, as a matter of fact, to our detriment, we are the most loving individuals, especially foundational black Americans. We forgive people. We love on people, even if they harm us and do terrible things to us. So what I think a lot of people like to project is that if there is some type of systematic thing that is going on, that the difference between the way that one group will control another is the race swap itself. So in other words, what they're projecting is that white supremacy is going to operate the same way as this so-called black supremacy. When if that was even a thing at all, we would not be out here oppressing people and being cutthroat and horrible and stealing from people and pilfering and pillaging people like a lot of them would. So the reality is that they're trying to portray this black supremacy image through this movie, or at least what they want to project that black supremacy would look like, although it's a real thing and it never will be a real thing. And this movie, while also trying to portray this black supremacy narrative, also kind of told on themselves, or at least told you about how white supremacy still operates. So what I mean by that is they have this tendency to tell half truths. They'll tell the truth about their own people in a lot of cases while lying about our people and how we operate. And the thing is that in these Planet of the Apes movies, it's no secret that the apes are allegories for black people. There's literally no secret to it. Anybody can just take a wild guess and see that they are making allegories to say that we, in this case, would be the monkeys, and that we are beings who have been portrayed for so long as unintelligent, not able to read, not able to do all these different things. And here we are, hyper intelligent, and in a space where we are the ones who rule the world, or at least are the majority in that world. So what this movie was trying to portray was that white supremacy will still need to do what it needs to do to have control, even if there is a black majority in this case. Now, when it comes to the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes movies, they had different characters playing different roles. Different characters served different purposes. And I just want to point out some of the key characters in this and what they were trying to convey. The first character that I wanted to really talk about and dive deep into is the Noah character. So as you know, Noah is the main character of this movie. The Noah character, from my perspective, was an allegory for a young foundational black American, or a young black person. And specifically, if I had to peg a generation, I would say maybe like the millennial generation. And the reason why I say that is because there's in my opinion, breaking point when it comes to millennials. A lot of us really want to seek justice, but we are constantly learning and trying to figure out what that's supposed to look like and what's the right way to seek it. Either way, our main purpose is to seek justice. And as a result, a lot of us get caught up in the image of what real justice is and what the real justice isn't. And we have tons of people who lead us astray, don't tell us the truth, and then they drown out the noise for the people who tell us the truth. And I'm talking about in terms of black people. So oftentimes we have this thing where, and I'm just going to speak from a political stance so you get what I mean. We have this thing where a lot of us, when we grew up, we thought that seeking justice for black people meant when it came time to vote, we will vote for the Democrats, and they will do things for black people or help us from not getting harmed by the Republicans, who are going to do certain things that are going to harm us, like as far as the police pulling us over and doing all this other stuff to us, basically. And so we have been for a long time listening to old niggas. And then we got to a point where we realized that the stuff that we had been told for a long time wasn't really working for us. So we started looking at the grassroots and a lot of activists, especially activists who were in new black media and things like that. And we're like, okay, so a lot of the things that we were told are actually not, they have not been giving us any real results or really solutions that are going to better us or empower us like we were originally hoping would happen. And so as a result, a lot of us are at this crossroads of not really knowing what to do and not really knowing what to think. And Noah was kind of at this position because he had his family, which basically told him, hey, us as apes, our clan, we need to be secluded individuals. Our main goal needs to be for us to think about the freedom aspect. And that's why I believe that the eagle portion where they were raising the eagles was a symbolism for freedom, because that's what eagles actually symbolize, is being able to be free. They wanted to be free from all of this mess. They want to be free from control from any other group, whether it be other apes or whether it be the so-called echoes in this case. So he had that mindset with them, but a lot of them were basically saying stay away from the echoes. The echoes shouldn't be interfering with our clan and all this other stuff. Now, you had the Proximus character and his clan, and how a lot of them were basically like, we need to get rid of these humans. So at this point, he's aware that these humans have a certain level of intelligence and a certain level of control that they want to have. So he basically was now being influenced to some extent by what Proximus was saying. And Proximus was kind of trying to take him underneath his wing to basically say, hey, this is what the humans are about, and we need to get rid of them at all costs, and anybody who stands in our way, they've got to go. And that was supposed to be somewhat of a semblance of those who are pro-black or people in the grassroots. And people who essentially, I guess, they like the dominant society likes to call them black nationalists. It's kind of symbolized all of that. And then you had the Raka character, who was one of Caesar's old friends. And the Raka character was essentially an old nigga, or at least an allegory for one. So now you have this Noah character who really is a black millennial who is trying to seek justice, but is being split in multiple ways and being confused because they do not know the proper way to go about seeking it for black people specifically. And now they're being split between people who want to isolate, which is their own people, but don't want to seek any type of justice. You have these people who are really like the pro-blacks, who are like, hey, we need to get rid of these humans because they're still a problem. They still want to control. They still want to do things. And then you have the humans, then you have Raka, who is like an old nigga who's basically saying, love on the humans, hug them, do everything you can to make sure that they know that that y'all are friends and you appreciate them and you want them to survive and all this other stuff. So he was basically on some old nigga shit. Basically, he was basically the type of Negro that would that would coon for butter biscuits. He would invite, Joe Biden into the church to sing and praise with him so that they can keep hooting and hollering. So that's who he basically was in so many ways. As I just said, the Raka character was totally an old nigga, because what I noticed is that with his character, they weren't making him a total blatant Sambo per se. But what they were doing with his character was they were making it so that he was distorting the message of Caesar. Caesar to me was more so like a Martin Luther King Jr., or at least what I perceive as the projection of what white people want people to think about Martin Luther King Jr. And what he was doing was projecting in my opinion, the deceptive part of Martin Luther King Jr.'s message in this case. So what I mean by that is he was talking about how Caesar loved the humans, and as a result, he does too. But that's not all Caesar was about, just like that was not all Martin Luther King Jr. was about. Because in the case of Martin Luther King Jr., his whole thing was, I believe that all men and women should be created equally, regardless of race and all this other stuff, right? That was like the main thing that everybody tries to project that Martin Luther King Jr. was about. Specifically, the dominant society loves to project that. That's all he was about. And this Raka character essentially did that same thing, but what he focused on was the part that said, love all people, meaning in this case, white people included. So when he was talking about the humans, he was essentially talking about white people. It was an allegory for white people. Now, Martin Luther King Jr., although he did have that speech where he said he had a dream that all people would be created equal, Martin Luther King Jr. was taking a different route to try to create tangibles for black people. And even in his final speeches and things like that, the things that he said kind of towards the end of his tenure, he talked about black empowerment in a way that was kind of similar to Malcolm X to a certain extent. So that part always gets left out. And yeah, that Raka character, he was on some like almost John Lewis type shit. He was out here like really Samuel. He was like Dems is some good white people, I back in the day, I was in Caesar, we used to get in good trouble. So I say we protect the humans. Them humans, they is a part of our community too. We should love on them and hug on them. That's kind of what he was on with the Noah character. He was hoping to kind of convince him that that was the way that he should move and the way he should be. And that the way that these black supremacists were trying to make the humans seem was folly. So this whole idea of what the Rocket character was trying to do was he was really trying to Sambo babble, and they were trying to cloak it in wisdom. So they were trying to make it seem like he was so wise, when really it's kind of like the old niggas now. They're not necessarily wise, they're just old. And really they're cowardly as well too. So that's kind of the route that they were trying to go. Let's fight back against these evil monkeys who are all about like apes being, you know, the big thing, apes being in control. And the humans, there is a lot of good to them. Now the May character was quite interesting, because there were a lot of things that actually happened with this character, and I want to kind of go through them as much as possible. One thing that I found interesting is that the May character had destroyed the egg, whether accidentally or whatever the case may be, which shows, and what I believe to be an allegory for the apes' freedoms being destroyed. So it kind of translates to black people and their freedoms being destroyed, or at least symbolizes that the dominant society is going to take away their freedoms. And it also shows how the dominant society likes to come into black folks' business and regulate what does and does not happen, which is what the May character was trying to do when she was spying on that Eagle clan and what they were trying to do. It's kind of like the whole, I talked about this before, the keeping tabs agenda. There's this keeping tabs agenda where the dominant society studies and looks at black culture and tries to figure out what we're doing all the time and the things that interest us. And sometimes they steal those things. Sometimes it's just because they want to know what we're really up to, what we might do against them. So a lot of times they really get in our business, and they almost instinctively have a culture of doing that even on a small scale. It's kind of like that meme. I don't know if y'all saw it, where there's a woman's kind of robotic voice as she's speaking, and she's like, when you're black, you're never really lonely, because there will always be a white person all up in your business. I don't know if y'all ever seen that meme, but I've seen it quite a bit on social media, and it'll be like depictions of like black people minding their own business and white people basically keeping tabs on them and checking them out. So in some cases, what they like to do is make it so the dominant society seems like they are accidentally getting into things and accidentally observing black people and accidentally bumping into them and stuff like that, when in actuality what they're trying to do is keep their presence in black people's business in order to keep tabs on them and making sure they're doing certain things, which I believe that was what they were also doing with this May character as well too. So I found it interesting that, you know, she got into their business. She also was trying to she also destroyed the egg and all sort of stuff, and that caused all of these different issues. And then the next thing I found interesting was that they actually, in my opinion, talked about the whole thing of how the dominant society can be quite deceptive. And one of the main ways that they showed that they can be deceptive in this case is when the May character was shown to be someone who actually can speak and was intelligent, because before it had been known that these echoes, or in this case humans, were people who could not speak anymore because of something that they did that took away their speech. And in this case she could, and she was pretending like she couldn't for quite a bit of time. So now it's, you know, here she is being deceptive because she's making it seem like she can't speak at all. Now the thing is that she talked about how there were other people, other humans that still existed, and how a lot of them, you know, couldn't speak and they couldn't, and they weren't intelligent like her and all sort of stuff. But she basically was able to, and there were other humans who were able to like her as well too. It was just that they couldn't communicate with each other. But I noticed when she tried to make it seem like there were certain humans that could not speak and weren't intelligent and all this other stuff, I noticed that they had certain features. A lot of them were darker looking, a lot of them were dirty looking, and a lot of them looked like they had their hair either braided or in some type of very natural looking style, almost as if to make some type of even inside allegory that these were the black people of their society. Because why were they so similar to the way that they try to portray and depict black people? So there was also that aspect as well too. There was also this thing of, from my perspective, this idea of putting the May character in the middle between you know, the Noah character and the Proximus character, and the two of them fighting over this white woman. So you now have two, in this case, black characters or black people who are fighting over this white woman. And it's and she's the one who's causing the war between black men. So I think that they were also trying to make an allegory in that case as well too. But there's a lot more when it comes to this May character, so I want to dive into all of it, like I said. I also noticed that as the movie went on, the May character progressively started going from being docile to being kind of aggressive. I mean, to a certain extent, she started actually sounding like Frieza from Dragon Ball Z. I thought after a while she was gonna say no more monkeys. I thought she was gonna be on that shit because like of the way that she was kind of looking. But when it comes to the May character, at a certain point, she started making it clear that she was worried about apes taking over, like an ape supremacy type of thing. And she was talking about how humans used to have all the control and it used to be, a thing where they were the ones who were in power. And we also saw that she was very secretive and she was very sneaky. She knew a lot more than what she was leading on. And this became very apparent when she was speaking with the Trevathan character. I don't know if I said his name right, but Trevathan, I think is his name. And he's a white man, like an older white man. And he served as a mentor to the Proximus character after Noah and everybody else had got captured. And he talked a lot about history and all these other philosophical things. And he kind of showed Proximus, who was the villain, the ropes. And so this Trevathan character I found to be kind of interesting as well too. And my belief with this character was that he kind of reminds me of what a Wigger, that type of thing, where the white people in the dominant society, they believe that this white person has basically sold out. So he's almost like a John Brown type of character to a certain extent, because he showed Proximus, who in this example is a black supremacist, all of the ropes and all of the ways that the dominant society has functioned in the past, and that there are definitely mechanisms that they had out there that they used in order to control people, to oppress people, and to basically get them in line. And he taught them all of that. He taught them all about history and how things were and how things used to be and all this other stuff. And so I noticed that the May character got very adamant whenever she was speaking with him, and she was talking about how they needed to be the ones to rule, again, because humanity were the ones that were in control. And Trevathan kept telling her over and over again, that's not how things are now. That's how they used to be, but that's not how they are now. And she didn't like that. And what they showed basically was that Trevathan was a white sacrifice. So in other words, he was a white person who they believed traded out the dominant society. So she was a character, she was representative of the white supremacists, and the white supremacists believing that when another white person who's a part of the dominant society turns their back on white supremacy, then they've got to go. And any ideals that are used to rid white supremacy of being a thing again also have to go as well too. And Trevathan was symbolic of that. So she got rid of the Trevathan character, because I found it very convenient that she just went and just killed Trevathan like it wasn't nothing. I mean, like, she just off this dude. Like, and the thing is that it made you think that this had been in her the whole time, because she kind of just moved forward and didn't really think about, what she had done. And it wasn't like she was in shock. She wasn't like, oh my God, I can't believe I just killed like a whole dude. Like, she literally just kept moving as they were trying to uncover this stuff that Proximus knew that she had knowledge of. Because the whole idea of her even doing this whole thing was that her and Noah were supposed to go and find this secret, I guess, weapon or type of thing that the humans once had, because he wanted control of all of those things, basically. And so she led Noah to that. And while doing that, that's when she killed the Trevathan character. And I think that he was killed because she said that this dude is a traitor. This dude is John Brown. This dude has given up on white supremacy, so white supremacy has given up on his ass. And that's basically how that went. I also noticed that when Proximus found out about what Noah and the May character had done to try to get in and see all these different weapons, because that's basically what they were uncovering, that she got to a point where she actually pulled out a gun herself and shot one of the apes. So this basically shows you how she was very quick to pick off, you know, in this case, black folk, the apes, but in the allegory, that would be black folk. She was very quick to get rid of them because she didn't see them as a thing where Proximus was evil and Noah and his people were good. She said, all y'all are apes and all you niggas got to go, basically. So she got a gun and then she started picking off Proximus like he was nothing, because her thing was apes can't rule. Not Proximus and his people can't rule, but apes basically can't rule. And at a certain point when there was a back and forth and, you know, Proximus wanted Noah to basically tell him what he found out from old girl and he didn't want to give her up and all this other stuff, he was going to basically take out some of Noah's folks. But what May had done was she tried to basically make it where she tried to drown the apes. And her plan was to really drown all of their asses, not just Proximus and his people, but all of them. So, I mean, this shows how the dominant society literally will just take out black people if they feel that they're too close to what can be the special power that they use that will put them in control. And they're willing to pull these fast moves and these different things and in order for basically black people to be wiped out. And in this case, you could even maybe see this as somewhat of an allegory for like how they use like tropical storms to take out black people in a secluded place and that type of thing. And a lot of times too, it also shows how the dominant society has a level of cutthroatness where in order for them to be able to stay in power, to have white supremacy they're willing to take out their own, but their main goal ultimately is to take out black people in a genocidal way. So this shows that May was an allegory for how white supremacy operates and how they, out of sheer desire to control, were, you know, willing to do things, even to harm people who have been nice to them and have been kind to them. And it also showed a level of desperation. Like the dominant society, I don't think y'all realize when it comes to entertainment media, there's a level of desperation. They know that a lot of us who are pro-black are onto them. And a lot of people like me are using platforms to be able to talk about the things that I've seen, the things that they do to try to harm us, and the things and the way their system operates. And so as a result, they get desperate. So they try to craft as many messages into these movies and television shows and things like that as possible so that you can kind of see it and look at it a different way, so that your eyes are closed, so you're not really thinking about this aspect of anti-blackness and what they're trying to do. So the May character was a symbolism of that desperation of the dominant society as well too, and how they really are trying their hardest to get rid of anybody who is pro-black. I also noticed this with the May character, which is that after what she had done, it's almost as if the attention just was taken completely off of her. The fact that she was trying to drown all of these apes, it turned into a thing where there was a fight between Noah and Proximus, or at least Noah with his people watching and Proximus. What it showed was that the dominant society is going to do deceptive things that are going to take the tension off of them and are going to make it so that black people are fighting black people. Black people are taking black people out. It kind of goes back to this idea that they try to drive a wedge between different black people in society. So they'll drive a wedge between black men and black women, or black people who are straight and black people who are gay, and then call it intersectionality. So they like to almost create narratives that are going to make it so that the attention is off of them and what they're trying to do versus the fact that there are issues within your own community that you need to solve. So essentially they're trying to create white supremacy by manipulating different the people within that same group. Now, another thing I noticed about the May character is at the very end, she came back to Noah and she said, I just came back to say goodbye. And they had a little bit of a back and forth. And he said something about, you know, apes and humans being able to cohabitate. And he gave her this memorabilia as well too. He gave her a little bit of a memento and that type of thing. And she had a gun behind her back as if she was going to snipe him as well too. So here's the thing. The threat was already gone. Or the so-called threat in this case, Proximus, was gone. And she was still trying to take out Noah, despite the fact that Noah had shown himself to be a civil ape. And that shows you that no matter if you are aggressive about your desires to create empowerment for your people or you are civil about it, that the dominant society wants you gone if they believe that you have enough self-esteem to be able to fight for yourself. Because even in part of his conversation, he said Proximus was right, or Proximus was right to a certain extent. So now it turned into a thing where she was ready to basically take him out, because her whole thing about humans being supreme at the end of the day was still something that was a part of her mindset and her mentality. So that had not gone away despite everything that had happened. And she was also trying to make it seem like she kind of did something to maybe save the day, because she had made this big water stream just cascade and from the dam and try to take all their asses out. And that was a way for them to basically leverage being able to fight back against Proximus when it wasn't. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Proximus character. The Proximus character was, in my opinion, a reincarnation of the Koba character who was in the first and the second Planet of the Apes movie. And he was your basic pro-black. He was almost like an exaggerated version of what the dominant society would call a black supremacist. So he would be like if you took Umar and you gave Umar some military weapons and made him even more extreme. That's basically what they were trying to do with this Proximus character. He believed in ape supremacy so much that he was willing to knock down other apes in order to get rid of people who would possibly be banded with humans. So it's not even a thing of these apes had to be aligned or like the humans. It was a thing of if they were even somewhat associated with them, if they were nearby them. So they basically were making an exaggerated version of Umar Johnson with the desire, Dr. Umar Johnson, with the added twist of him having some type of knowledgeability of using military weapons and arsenals. So with that being said, what they were trying to do was show that, Proximus had been driven by this control factor like the humans had, that he had become one of the humans to a certain extent. And essentially, if you're looking at it from the opposite end, what it really was trying to hide was that Proximus was a character who was trying to weed out the bullshit. He knew that the humans were the problem and the cause as to why the apes are where they are today, why they're in a post-apocalyptic world, where they're in a world where they weren't treated the way that they needed to be treated. And he saw that that was a big part of Caesar's message. And as a result, he, said those apes who are going to be a part of the problem, in other words, being inclusive to humans, we're going to basically knock them people off. So they were almost like somewhat of a semblance of coonery or Samboism. Now, where I think Proximus obviously took it too far was that, these humans damn infiltrated these monkeys' different bases and shit like that. So they weren't, it's a difference between they infiltrated my base and I'm trying to be cool with them. I'm trying to be buddy-buddy with them. So I could kind of get with like more like a Killmonger character where he was like, look, I'm going to eliminate the white supremacists and I'm going to eliminate any coons who are going to stop black folks from being empowered. And which is why he kind of was running roughshod up in the Wakanda kingdom. Whereas Proximus was just basically like, hey, I'm just going to, take over and do whatever. But again, you have to remember, this is a projection of this whole black supremacy narrative that the dominant society wants us to believe and wants us to think is actually a real thing when we know damn well it is not. So that's basically what that's about. And by the way, with that black supremacy shit, I want to be clear. The only reason why the dominant society actually does that is because they want to find a way to counter the narrative that we need reparations, that if we get reparations, it's going to lead to black supremacy. Now, again, I want you to understand this. They put us in a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation. Because if black people say that we've been mistreated and we need things, we need resources, etc., the first thing they want to say is pull yourself up by your bootstraps and do A, B, C, and D, E, F, and G. Then when we actually get up and we fight for reparations because that's a debt that's owed, then they want to say, oh, okay, well, there's going to be black supremacy, so now it's a problem. It's just a problem when we say we need help, and it's a problem when we actually get out and we try to fight for things. And even when we do things on our own that have nothing to do with reparations, what ends up happening? It ends up being a thing where they sabotage the things that we create. Now, the last point that I wanted to make about Noah and May's interaction that I found interesting was that he said, "Can apes and humans really, live and exist together?" What they were trying to do with that statement was they were trying to create an integration narrative. This idea that integration itself could be the solution to having a better world. So they were in a certain way questioning whether or not this actually was the proper solution. So that's one thing that I found to be interesting too. But I want to go into why I believe this was interesting and the overall person I believe that they were trying to give this message to. I've talked about this before on Instagram, but there's this thing that I noticed that the dominant society is starting to do with some of these movies, and I think they did it here. I believe that they're trying to create this narrative that I would call super controlled opposition. And the difference between that and controlled opposition is that controlled opposition typically involves a face value narrative, something that's kind of simple, where you have this character that has a pro-black aesthetic and they do certain things that show that they want to try to create black empowerment. There's other things around that as well too. Usually they make them a black woman, usually they either make them LGBT or they put them in an interracial relationship, or they make the black man a villain or that type of thing. But in super controlled opposition narratives, what they do is they take all the nuances into account. I mean, like, they talk about everything that we talk about as well too, which is why I said that they're thriving in half truths. Although they're creating somewhat of a blueprint of for the dominant society to try to keep white supremacy being a thing that'll keep them in control, they're also to a certain extent saying this to pro-blacks. They're not even directing their attention to these intersectional Negroes. They're directing their attention to us, new black media, black people in the grassroots, pro-black people. And they're saying, we see that these intersectional Negroes are a little bit more gullible. They will fall for our okie doke when we have this very simplistic image of pro-blackness. But you pro-blacks, you see past the nonsense. You've seen all the stuff that we've tried to throw at you. But we want to let you know, we're with you too. That's why we're going to show you that, yes, May is the white supremacist, like you said. Yes, these apes are black people. Yes, black supremacy is what we're trying to portray. Yes, we're trying to portray that there are narratives that you have said that are absolutely true. It's like, yeah, we know you're speaking the truth. We know you're telling it like it is. We know that you are calling out our bullshit and you're calling out the bullshit that has been there. And I promise you, if you keep supporting us, we're going to do y'all right. What they're simply trying to say is, you pro-blacks are individuals whose attention and viewership we want to continue to get. And as a result, we're going to do things to pacify you so that you do not try to create your own thing and you continue to keep supporting what we created and giving us money. That's essentially what they're trying to do with these super controlled opposition narratives. And instead of trying to speak just simply to these individuals who aren't seeing everything that I'm seeing, they want to talk directly to us. And that's how you can tell that there is a lot of desperation, y'all. So y'all really need to kind of think about this type of stuff when you're watching these movies. All right, y'all, I hope you enjoyed what I had to say, and I hope you enjoyed this review and you found it insightful. I'm going to get going. I hope you all continue to look at a lot of the other videos that I have coming soon. Other than that, I hope y'all have a great rest of y'all's night, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.